Hi folks, Chris this time with a lot of changes to the system. Tonight we're tempting fate. We may cause the crash of this live stream, but this second computer has now been wired into our Ethernet system. You see this blue cable going up here that actually runs out to a socket in my living room just outside this radio room, and then an Ethernet lead goes up through the roof and across to our modem at the front of the house. We're at the back, and I'm hoping that we're going to be able to run Zoom on that computer, which is fairly underpowered. It's an old i3, and LiveStream, of course, on this computer. Now, what's going to happen, I have no idea. The computer might fall over. I may not be able to establish a Zoom connection because I'm unfamiliar with the Zoom controls to set up a room. I'll look like a klutz whichever way it goes, so you'll have to bear with me. I'm not all that computer literate except in computer audio, in which I think I flatter myself that I know a few things, particularly as regards audio restoration of vintage audio, which you'll hear a bit of tonight. But I'm hoping that we're going to be able to organise some form of audio feedback via internet for our talkback, apart from the old amateur radio, which is tried, trusted and simple. I never thought I'd say ham radio was simple, but compared to this, I'll just check that I've got a stream. As always, I worry about that. Yes, we've got a stream, so that's no worry. And have we got any viewers yet? I don't see any Oh, 5. Okay, I get conflicting numbers from the two means I have of dialing up. However, just to describe the trials and tribulations this week, we had an Ethernet switcher running this computer and that computer through a single Ethernet cable, and it just refused to work on live streaming and Zoom together. I don't know what happened. We did have a live stream where we tested it on Thursday night, 2 days ago, myself and my computer lady Andrea, who incidentally is also an F-call amateur radio operator, but it refused to work with the switcher. So now I have a separate cable, temporary of course, going out separately to my modem. So 2 wires to the modem for the 2 computers, and the modem has 4 sockets in it. So could fall over due to bandwidth restrictions, could fall over due to the restrictions of an old i3 computer. I only ever intended this as a support computer, nothing flash. My big computer behind the webcam you're looking at me on does most of the work. Anyway, I see it's 9:31, I better go on the air. Hello, this is VK3 Alpha Mike Lima, with the usual Saturday night test transmission. Tonight, radio history, predominantly pre-war, predominantly Britain, a little bit of Denmark, and a little bit of America. And tonight we will be attempting for the first time, probably unsuccessfully, but there's a chance that it might work, getting Zoom internet-based feedback, video and sound, for our callback in addition to ham radio. I know that Zoom will only work on a free basis for 40 minutes, but it's be enough time to test it. We had an unsuccessful test on Thursday night. Those of you who've dialed up my my YouTube channel will have seen that test. We ran it for an hour. We could not get that computer going with the other one on a Ethernet switcher, but now I've changed the computer's connection direct to the modem without the switcher, the second computer. So cross fingers, we may actually achieve Zoom feedback tonight, in which case people like Rowley in Auckland, New Zealand, and perhaps even people now enjoying their lunch in England may be able to join us. Who knows? I'll give you further details as time goes on, and I'm very much winging this, flying this by ear, by the skin of my teeth. So if I make a fool of myself, don't say I didn't warn you. As an initial item, I thought I'd show a video which had dreadful sound in its initial upload. It's a film made by the London, or the British GPO film unit in 1936 for, of course, the GPO of Britain, but it details the communications that the GPO then had to communicate with the pre-war equivalent of the United Nations, the League of Nations, the famous unsuccessful League of Nations, which was based in Geneva. Unfortunately, at the end of the First World War, at Versailles, the reparations demands put in by nations apart from the USA, which where President Wilson could see that there would be trouble by insisting on punitive reparations to Germany. Australia and France and Britain, all with the bitterness of war just behind them, insisted on reparations from Germany, which basically dragged it financially to its knees with hyperinflation and inadvertently caused the rise of dictatorships, I suppose, as one of the concomitants of economic hardship. But the League of Nations was a noble attempt to spread world peace, and naturally Britain was very concerned to maintain close communication ties backwards and forwards to Geneva. So the GPO had special arrangements, which you'll see in this film, technically and in terms of organisational arrangements, that were very intricate, bound by international protocol, and technically interesting. So let's go back to 1936 for our initial film. And this should work. Message to Geneva.
By King Edward VIII, at the opening of Parliament, 3rd November 1936. The policy of my government continues to be based upon membership of the League of Nations. They desire to see the League strengthened for its work in the Pacific settlement of international disputes. The League is in session. Today's events have international importance. The BBC observer at Geneva rings up Broadcasting House. He gives them details on which they plan his evening broadcast. The BBC calls Post Office headquarters. Headquarters inform the international exchange.
Oh, yes. Now, the BBC want a broadcast from Geneva directly after the second news bulletin. Yes. We will use the Geneva Lions Paris Underground Circuit extended to London. Yes, all right. I'll phone Paris and ask them to arrange accordingly.
The success of this broadcast depends on the Post Office. Spread out across Europe is a network of Post Office landlines. The broadcast will be relayed through this landline to the BBC for transmission. One after another, 6 control stations connect the sections of the line until the circuit between the League and the BBC is complete. Downstairs, the engineers are instructed to prepare the circuit.
Paris music circuits? Yes.
Music lines give the best reproduction.
All right. Warning Canterbury immediately. Hello, Canterbury. Prepare the Paris music circuit for a League broadcast tonight.
Canterbury informs the next control station, Boulogne, to make a similar connection. Boulogne to Paris. Paris to Lyon. Lyon to Geneva. Geneva telephone exchange to the Palace of the Nations. The Observer can now broadcast through the BBC, London. The BBC telephones the League studio to stand by.
That is the end of the second news bulletin. We are now taking you over to Geneva for a talk from our Observer.
The Observer looks for his signal to go.
Of all the ideas for reforming the League put forward either in writing or by word of mouth to the Assembly, there have been two concrete ones, and they've been put forward by Great Britain.
Behind this broadcast is the story of an ancient city and a new political ideal. Geneva was the haughtiest city of Switzerland, itself the most nationally aloof of European countries. Yet, because of its steadfast neutrality, it has become the main base of international discussion. After the war fever of 1914 to 1918, followed a drive for peace. The forces of cooperation organized themselves.
In 1919, the International Labour Organization began work. A draft covenant was adopted by 42 states. On the 15th of November 1920, the first assembly of the League of Nations was held in Geneva.
All smaller projects were merged in a larger and more ambitious scheme. President Wilson's League of Nations.
Here is one of the English delegates on the steps of the old electoral building, which is still used for conferences. Monsieur Léon Blum, the French Prime Minister.
Geneva was to become the clearinghouse for the agreements and disagreements of the world.
In 1929, the first stone was laid of a new Palace of the Nations, now nearly complete. A committee of 5 architects, 3 French, 1 Hungarian, and 1 Italian, was selected by the international competition to design it. Workers of 10 nationalities are cooperating happily in its construction. The Secretariat is already in occupation of the wing allotted to it.
Palais des Nations. Allô? Allô? Vous désirez Monsieur Stopani, au Comité économique?
The League has to try to eliminate economic anarchy from the world, as well as political anarchy. At this moment, the League's Economic Committee is considering the world economic situation. It is dealing with all sorts of practical questions, such as
the effect of economic nationalism on most favored nation clause in treaties, clearing agreements and exchange control, existing patent rights obstructing standardization of anti-streptococcic serum, customs tariffs and export restriction.
in the palace is a special post office where as many as 20 bags of mail come in and go out every day. The League has branch offices and correspondents all over the world. Communiques and pamphlets are always being sent out. Reports are always arriving.
19, 20, c'est fini.
Members' contributions are fixed by the Assembly in gold francs, according to an estimate of their ability to pay. Mr. Seymour Jacklin, Treasurer, receives the money.
Have you the file on the Swiss government's contribution? I see they have paid for this year.
They have paid as usual at the beginning of the year, the sum of 489,000 francs.
Thank you.
If the League is to fulfill its object, it must get the people of all nations thinking internationally. Its deliberations must be open. It needs publicity.
111 journalists of 35 nations are permanently accredited to the League. In 1932, for the disarmament conference, 600 press cards were issued. A large room and a row of telephone booths are set aside for the press.
At the League of Nations this afternoon, when Mr. Anthony Eden rose from his seat. 1 minute, please. Will you take this instead? Thank you.
Mr. F.P. Walters, one of the Under-Secretaries General of the League, from time to time directs vital documents to be broadcast. The League has part control of the Radio Suisse station at Prangin, known as Radio Nations. In times of emergency, the control is complete.
Ici Prangin.
I want to consult you about these letters which we have received from governments about the reform of the League. We have about 20 of them now. And I think it would be a very good thing if we could send them out from the Radio Nation station to all the countries outside Europe. Now, would that present any technical difficulty?
Pas du tout, monsieur.
All right.
C'est entendu.
Every Saturday night, between 11:30 and 12:15, they broadcast a bulletin in English, French, and Spanish. This account of the League's policy and work can be picked up on shortwave sets all over the world. Governments and delegations of the most remote countries are constantly in touch.
Whatever may be the details of the Constitution of the League, the really essential thing about it is that it represents the first and only practical measure which has been taken by the human race as a step towards establishing the rule of law in the relations between countries.
The League has now 58 member states, 65 international organizations, 22 accredited ministers. The new building is itself part of the publicity program. A message will go from London to Geneva by ship and train in 22 hours, by aeroplane in 7 hours, by radio in less than 100th of a second.
Radio remains the best means of international communication and the best publicity for international cooperation.
And it's remarkable how even now, long after the days of that terrific tension in the Mediterranean and those fierce attacks on Mr. Eden as though he were the cause of the whole League action, the eyes of everybody here turn always on Great Britain.
The world is hearing of the striving of the League in the cause of peace.
The ill-fated League of Nations, 1936, and as you may have heard in one of the announcements there, they referred to King Edward VIII. A very brief period in 1936, I think it was about 9 months, that Edward VIII, formerly the Prince of Wales, was on the throne. Later the Duke of Windsor. He abdicated so that he could marry the woman that he loved. And I've never understood that relationship. I don't think very many people have. But he abdicated in favour of King George the VI and the Queen Mother, the parents of the present Queen. League of Nations, the pre-war attempt at creating peace, which was rather ill-fated in the face of the rise of fascism. This is VK3 Alpha Mike Lima. You may have noted quite a bit of the pre-war arrangements for electronic communication in that. The GPO film unit was renowned as being a birthplace of many of the careers of people who were making it big in the documentary film scene at that time, the interwar period, when John Grierson was so famous for his formation of the theory of documentary film. So another film made by the GPO at around the same time, a couple of years later, 1938, the GPO was building a shortwave communication system to provide a reliable shortwave telephone network to cross the Atlantic to America, of course. And in the cooling marshes east of London, near the mouth of the Thames, they built a radio station with multiple connected rhombic antennas, an extraordinary array 2 miles long, connected by embryonic coaxial cables that were made of copper pipe with two radiuses of copper pipe, one within the other, and all hand soldered, as you will see. Now, this next documentary has not generally been on the net, so I may run into copyright problems, in which case I'll have to yank it off very quickly. But I hope to be able to show you it. Talking to America, or rather listen to America.
A businessman in London makes a call to America.
Hello, Trunks? I want to make a call to America.
His voice is put through from his local telephone exchange to the international switchboard at Faraday Building.
To New York. I want exchange.
From there, it goes by landline to Rugby radio station. At Rugby, the voice is amplified 120 million times. It's carried from a shortwave transmitter to one of the arrays, or systems of aerials.
New York is waiting.
From the array, the voice is projected into the upper atmosphere in the direction of New York.
This is Max. Max, I'm talking from London. I can't hear.
The voice replying from New York is transmitted from Lawrenceville, New Jersey, but it isn't received at Rugby.
Hello? Hello, yes?
It comes over to Baldock, and thence back to Faraday House, where the two voices are put together as a conversation. Now, on their way over the Atlantic, these telephone voices meet various troubles. The electrical waves which carry the voices are reflected, up and down, between the surface of the Earth and a layer of the atmosphere called the ionosphere. It's here that trouble begins, because the ionosphere is continually shifting about and also fluttering. These movements are probably due to the sun. For example, when there are sunspots in the sun, the ionosphere flutters most. Then there's another trouble. Instead of the waves crossing the Atlantic by one path only, they split up along different paths. Any two paths will have slightly different lengths, and one wave will arrive after the other. And the result is that the two waves get slightly out of rhythm. Then, with the movement of the ionosphere, the amount that they're out of rhythm keeps on varying. But sometimes they add up, and sometimes they cancel right out. If they arrive at Baldock at a moment when they're canceling out, the voice fades away. So a new station is wanted, which will, in some way, overcome this fading, particularly since a big bunch of sunspots is expected in 1940. Down the Thames, opposite Canvey Island, there is a village called Cooling, which overlooks a big stretch of marshes. Here the engineers of the post office are already plotting the layout of a new receiving station to face exactly towards the Lawrenceville transmitters. They're going to employ the Muser reception system. A Muser, to begin with, consists of 2 miles of diamond-shaped aerials, 16 of them. The site for the aerials has to be right away from the interference of factories, cars on main roads, and radio transmitters. It has to be dead flat for the whole of the 2 miles. Cooling marshes have a variation of only a foot, up or down, and the ground has to be wet to be a good conductor. The first work is to put up the central poles for the 16 aerials, one every 220 yards for 2 miles. Then, all the way down the line of poles, a trench has to be dug. This is to take underground cables back from the aerials to the receivers in the main building. Each cable really consists of 2 copper tubes, a little one inside a big one, with star-shaped insulators to keep them concentric. The tubes are taken out to the trench in 20-foot lengths. There are going to be 16 cables, 1 cable for each aerial. The longest of them 2 miles long, the shortest about 200 yards. So you can imagine how many joints there are to make. The jointing has to be a perfect job, because the voice from America is going to pass down the tubes and mustn't pick up more troubles just before it gets home. For protection, the tubes and the outside of the joints are covered with bitumen and a sort of bandage. Then, before the cables are laid in their trench, each of the lengths is tested. When about 200 feet of each of the cables is ready, they are lifted up one by one and put down in the trench. Inside the station, they curl up out of the ground to be fitted to the receiving apparatus. The aerials are insulated and held up at 4 corners, since each aerial runs round 4 poles in a diamond. The aerial joins its cable at the top of the main pole of the diamond. The Musa system does not pretend to alter nature. The sun still has sunspots, the ionosphere still flickers, the waves are still out of rhythm. The waves come down from America at various angles. Let's take 2 and call them A and B. Actually, each wave is spread out over a front. That's why at cooling we have to have 2 miles of aerials. It's obvious that the front does not hit all the aerials at the same time. Also, it has different lengths of cable to run along. So that from the furthest aerial, it takes longest to reach the end of the cable. At the end of the cables, Musa puts a series of boxes, which act as brakes, and hold up the first arrivals till the last ones have had time to catch up. The Bs come down late. They hit the aerials at a steeper angle. The hold-up at the ends of the cables is greater than it was for the As. The Bs divert into a set of B brake boxes. Here then we have the 2 waves, A and B, received separately. They are still out of rhythm, but now they can be combined and put into rhythm, in fact, just as they left America. Thanks to Musa, Cooling Post Office radio station is going to be important not only for the reply voice in long-distance business calls, but also for receiving radio broadcasts from America.
America, the opening speech by President Roosevelt. We are now taking you over to the United States.
A few days ago, a whisper, fortunately untrue, raced around the world that armies standing over against each other in unhappy array were about to be set in motion. Your businessmen and ours felt it alike. Your farmers and ours heard it alike. Your young men and ours wondered what effect this might have on their lives. Instead, we in the Americas have become a consideration to every propaganda office and to every general staff beyond the seas. The vast amount of our resources, the vigor of our commerce, and the strength of our men have made us vital factors in world peace, whether we choose it or not.
The GPO Film Unit of Britain, Listening to America, 1938, and that was a documentary shot, directed by Humphrey Jennings, who was one of the leaders of the then new documentary film movement, principally coming out of Britain. This is VK3 Alpha Mike Lima with a regular Saturday night test transmission. Tonight dealing principally with the history of radio, principally pre-war. Now, coming to radio hams, there was what was called a Pete Smith specialty. I wonder if anybody listening is old enough to remember, in the cinemas, prior to television, the Pete Smith specialties. They would be topical, usually humorous sessions, talking about various aspects of life. But early on, pre-war, Pete Smith did some fairly serious documentary, including one on radio hams in 1939, just on the brink of the Second World War.
Massive and expensive equipment marks the professional radio station. But in the amateur field, radio parts often include pieces of assorted junk ingeniously assembled by operators who are called hams and who take up broadcasting as a hobby. Cards to prove long-distance contacts are exchanged by the hams and proudly displayed. Jimmy Mulligan here has lots of cards and lots of strange radio parts, such as whiskey glasses mounted on a cake tin. Ma's funnel actually becomes a loudspeaker, and her sieve part of a microphone. Winding a coil becomes comparatively simple when using the family egg beater. And so, while radio's youth is being served, it's cramping Ma Mulligan's culinary style. No end. Well, chow is about ready, so it's time to get the hard-working Mulligan family together. Call Jimmy. Call Jimmy. Call Jimmy. Call Jimmy. Well, I guess that means you, Grandpa. And so Jimmy is called. But shh. Grandpa, Jimmy's practically in a trance right now, so don't interrupt. All amateurs are heroes of the air at heart and dream of a chance to serve humanity or to save lives. It does happen, you know. For instance, in far-off Alaska some years ago, Clyde DeVinna, prominent movie cameraman, devoted long winter evenings to his amateur radio set. Frequently, he talked over a span of 15,000 miles to a lonely lighthouse keeper in New Zealand. Although a great distance separated them, the two amateur operators exchanged gossip nightly and soon became radio buddies. One evening, alone in his cabin, DeVinna became weak. Deadly vapors from a leaky stove were the cause. A few minutes later, when DeVinna's conversation ended abruptly, the lighthouse keeper tried to renew the contact. With all windows locked against the freezing weather, DeVinna's ebbing strength was going rapidly. Finally, realizing that some strange, overpowering force was clutching his life, he managed to repeat the cry of help. Help! In answer to his friend's cry of distress, the lighthouse keeper called the emergency signal, Mayday, Mayday. And so, everywhere within hearing of his voice, operators ceased broadcasting and stood by. With the air lanes now silenced, he called for any amateur operator stationed in or near Teller, Alaska. Near Teller, Alaska. Teller, Alaska. Thus, from a fellow ham over 15,000 miles away, a youthful amateur in Alaska learned that he might yet be able to save the life of a neighbor. Briefly, the lighthouse keeper told his story. And the youngster at Teller lost no time in phoning a doctor living near DeVinna's cabin to rush to the cameraman's aid. And so, due to the efficiency and quick thinking of radio hams, Clyde DeVinna is alive today. But getting back to the Mulligan family, Jimmy's still missing. Call Jimmy. Call Jimmy. Call Jimmy. Oh, dear, Grandpop's missing now, too. Well, she'll get him. What's this? Shh. Now they're both in a trance. Perhaps they're listening to another dramatic radio episode, like the story of courage and service of Wilbur Crane an amateur operator who flew far out over the Atlantic in search of a missing plane. Crane's pilot, Radio Ham Crane, had volunteered to make the search for the missing ship in his own plane. Amateurs all along the coast were standing by to pick up progress of the search. Ship radio professionals listened, ready to go to the rescue. Tensely listening to his reports too, and worried for his safety, were Crane's wife and son. For hours, the uneventful search continued, and then lost in a bad storm, far out at sea, but the search goes on. Heartbreaking anxiety and fear made minutes seem like hours. Weekly, the dots and dashes continued to come in, but the words they spelled out offered no encouragement to Crane's wife and boy. Then, as suddenly as they flew into it, Crane came out of the battering storm. Sailing smoothly into the dawn, and as the visibility cleared, a miracle happened. For there, right below them by a streak of rare luck, was the missing seaplane with possible survivors. Crane flashes the news. Safely out of the storm, the missing plane found. Never had a happier message come over the Crane loudspeaker. The broadcast at the ship's location, their job would be over. But what's this? Hundreds of miles at sea, and their gas practically gone. They hadn't a chance. But Crane's chief concern was to establish the location of that wrecked plane and broadcast the news to the world. Somehow, their plane must be kept in the air until this work was done. Unaware of this new danger, thousands waited to pick up the report that would send rescue ships to the missing plane. But to the wife, there came a premonition of some new peril that cast its shadow over her husband. Goes on the air. And so, with the conclusion of the report, came the crushing news of their fate. And thus, two heroes once again preserved the finest traditions of the amateur radio fraternity. The radio message picked up by a ship made possible the rescue of those for whom Crane and his pilot had made the supreme sacrifice. Little wonder that to Jimmy and to thousands of others like him, the amateur radio offers continuous inspiration to render aid in times of stress. Whenever a calamity occurs, the ham operator courageously and unselfishly comes to the service of the community. And speaking of calamities, well, take a look at Ma Mulligan's dinner. Boy, break out the bicarbonate. Now, Ma, remember your blood pressure. Take it easy now. So that's the way it is, eh? Well, she'll tell him. That sounds like China. Wow, that's coming 5,000 miles on a homemade set. No wonder the Mulligans are thrilled. Through the genius of little Jimmy, they hear a man speak in far-off China.
In Chinese, that means that that's all for the night, folks.
Yeah, good night.
A Pete Smith specialty from 1939. Good publicity for ham radio. One wishes that it would have as much these days. This is VK3 Alpha Mike Lima with the regular Saturday night test transmission. And this night, dealing principally with pre-war film of amateur radio and related activities. One of the surprises that I get in terms of being retired from archival film work and history is when odd archives in odd parts of the world turn up with radio material that you never suspect. And I was lucky enough to look into the Danish radio archives and found a little bit on the very small but admittedly significant Danish radio manufacturing industry with a film made about 1935, I suspect a home movie in 16mm. So let me show you this. I'll have to do a bit of a commentary. This is made in Denmark, as I say, in 1935, and they had a small but significant radio industry, the Solar radios, I believe, produced in this factory. The Nordisk Solar Company. And they produced a radio called the Audiola, which I suspect is a TRF set. You can see it's all wired in tag strips there. There's the production line. Not a huge production line, but quite a few. Enough for domestic consumption in the mid-30s. Unless I'm mistaken, those are pre-octal valves, which would put this 1934-35 perhaps. Rather a nice little bit of documentary film made by some amateur. Fairly obviously the managing director looking at an electrodynamic speaker, which just then were becoming standard. Much better quality out of those moving coil speakers than the early moving armature ones. And better again from the horn loudspeakers of the 20s. This is the cutting out the material for the chassis pan for the radio. There's the assembly line. Guys with big soldering irons. Huge by modern standards. Only one step down, I suppose, from the stove-heated soldering iron concept. And an under-chassis view, doing some voltage tests, no doubt on grid bias and all the rest of it. That, I think, is an early superhet, unless I'm mistaken. It would have been a higher priced radio at that stage. They were just changing over from TRF sets. There are some inductance coils, tuning coils, and there's the machine that winds them. And the cases of the radios in those days were entirely wood. The chassis bender, making the chassis pans. Chassis benders are not much different today. So that was a glimpse of the radio manufacturing industry in Denmark in I'd guess 1934-35, just looking at the style of radio there. This is VK3 Alpha Mike Lima with a selection of radio material, mostly pre-war. Going on to the next excerpt we've got for you, if I can find it. I'll leap forward a little bit out of context here to talk about early transistors, Philco. Philco was an American manufacturing company in Philadelphia. It merged with other companies and was subsumed during the 60s, but this documentary is jumping a little bit out of context for us tonight, but it's from the mid-50s, and it's on the manufacture of what they called surface barrier transistors. We now know them as junction transistors. They were just evolving out of the point contact transistors of the earliest period at this time. So, a view of Philco radio and transistor production, 1955-56. Philco transistors, the tiny giants of the future. Produced by Philco Motion Picture Unit. Yes, they had one in collaboration with Maxwell Associates. I'm not sure whether they made Maxwell House instant coffee, but anyway.
Today we're walking in undiscovered scientific realms where man has never been before. To the entrance of new worlds of wonder. In the last dynamic decade, science has rolled away the mist of centuries and given man a vision of things to come undreamed of only a few short years ago. Jet airplanes at supersonic speeds have left the sound barrier far behind. The mysteries of nuclear fission ceased to exist when man unleashed the hydrogen bomb, the most tremendous force our Earth has ever known. And far out into outer space roar man-guided missiles reporting back new secrets of the universe. These tremendous advances and new discoveries are the direct result of the dedicated concentration of American industry to creative scientific research. In the vanguard of the industrial leaders in electronic research strides Philco Corporation, whose scientific discoveries and inventions have helped make possible many of the new miracles of our times. Early electronic research in the field of transistors gave promise of new developments that would revolutionize communications equipment, as well as control systems for rockets and guided missiles. Work begun by Philco in 1949 in this phase of electronics paved the way to eventual large-scale transistor production for both civilian and military consumption. In the Philco Research Division, an entirely new technique of making transistors was invented. A new liquid jet etching process was developed, so gentle that the thickness of the material, so important for proper electrical characteristics, could be regulated molecule at a time. Thickness was gauged during the etching process by passing a beam of invisible infrared light from one liquid jet to another through the semiconductor. When the light intensity reached the proper level, the current was turned off automatically so that thickness was maintained with acute accuracy. With similar jets, but with the current reversed, the proper material was deposited at critical spots on exact opposite sides of the wafer. Surprisingly, it turned out that a blank cut from this germanium wafer, the heart of the transistor, assembled in this manner, did not need to be alloyed, but was ready to operate as a transistor as soon as it was clean and had connector wires attached. This tremendously important discovery resulted in Philco's development of the surface barrier transistor, which, because it could be etched with precision accuracy to 1/10,000th of 1 inch, could perform phenomenally with great dependability on very high frequencies. Here was a tiny element, more than capable of replacing a vacuum tube, that would revolutionize the vast, ever-growing computer field. In addition, new frontiers were crossed in wide applications for modern military field communications equipment and critical circuitry demanded for industrial uses. Following a year of intensive development in this remarkable research laboratory discovery, which made surface barrier transistors a commercial reality, actual production was commenced at Philco's ultra-modern Lansdale tube plant. In the meantime, Philco Research, in a continuing study of the transistor field, developed a new method for preparing an alloy junction transistor having thickness controlled by electrochemical etching, but still maintaining the high gain of an alloy transistor. This new type was named the microalloy transistor. Combined with the surface barrier, these two together make an ideal team in computer circuits. Demands for Philco transistors from both the government and industry began to grow by leaps and bounds. And increases in transistor production area at Lansdale began to stretch available facilities beyond their limits until it became obvious a new plant was needed. Today, in the thriving little Pennsylvania town of Spring City, Philco maintains a completely air-conditioned modern plant with over 90,000 square feet of productive facilities exclusively devoted to the manufacture of the highest quality transistors in the industry. In contrast to its quiet countryside surroundings, Philco's Spring City plant hums with excitement and a sense of destiny. To the Spring City plant, capable of turning out many millions of transistors, come valuable bars of precious germanium, as well as other components that will shortly, through delicate hand and automated operations, become one of the many varying types of Philco transistors. From minute M1s for hearing aids and larger alloy junction types for auto radios to the highly critical types for intricate computer systems. Every piece of material that goes into a Philco transistor is given rigid electrical characteristic quality tests before acceptance. Special attention and special checks are made upon the bars to make sure that they measure up to Philco's high specifications, and only the purest germanium is accepted. In preparing the wafers for a transistor, the highest standards of cleanliness must be maintained in every step of the process, and complete purification is stressed from the moment the original material arrives until the finished transistors are packed with their multitude of exact matched twins for shipment to new and ever-increasing uses in modern, streamlined electronic products. The first step in the highly mechanized process of transistor manufacture requires the growing of large, pure crystals and carbon crucibles built into steel furnaces capable of ignoring all earth vibrations. Here, for example, the germanium ingot is formed in a tiny electronic oven heated to 1400 degrees centigrade by precise electronic controls. Into this pure crystal of precious molten germanium, growing like a seed into an ingot, are injected certain controlled impurities, such as antimony or arsenic, known to transistor scientists as doping agents. This insertion of impurities, introduced at tolerances as close as 1 part to a million, gives the finished germanium ingot the desired polarity and electrical characteristics which will be demanded in its future use. Whether in the driver's seat of an intercontinental ballistics missile or bringing entertainment to you on a cordless radio in your home. Only a certain center portion of the finished ingot bearing the proper characteristics can be used for the actual manufacture of the transistor core. X-ray tests check this orientation of the semiconductor ingot. Now, diamond-impregnated saws slice the quality-approved ingots into thin wafers. In several steps, these saw-cut wafers are lapped down on both sides simultaneously between 2 rotating precision plates with an abrasive compound flowing over them. They are then immersed in a strong chemical solution which etches them down to the desired smoothness and thickness. Through all of these processes, the wafers are never touched by human hand, for the slightest impurity annealing to their surface would ruin their future life. The gleaming smooth wafers are now automatically cut into strips. Then the strips are placed in machines that automatically cut them into the desired size blanks, where experienced technicians sort them with vacuum pickups. Next, the precious blanks go to a roller gauge, which automatically measures their thickness to high precision. It groups them in bins and rejects for further etching any that do not meet its rigid mechanical selection. Much of the mechanized machinery needed in transistor production had to be designed and built by Philco scientists and engineers, for only they knew exactly what each machine must accomplish in the fantastically complicated production of a transistor. This Philco-developed equipment has modernized transistor manufacture to a point where these mighty midgets of the electronic world can be rapidly produced almost like lollipops in a candy factory. New modern methods of mechanization are daily being added with eventual complete automation, a near future reality. Now the blanks are packed in glass jars, categorized by size and measures of resistivity, and are ready for transfer to the manufacturing floors where they will become the hearts of many different types of transistors for a multitude of products. At the entrance to any manufacturing area at Philco's Spring City plant are vacuum welcome mats, which pull the dust and lint from your shoes. One more insurance that no impurities contaminate the hospital clean air in which the various transistors are made. The blanks are precision soldered to a part of their final case, which is already mounted in a specially designed carrier block that transports it through numerous operations. Now the assembled blanks go to the etching machines where automatic transfer takes them through a number of complicated processes. Under intense light, which speeds up the etching processes due to germanium's light reactive properties, tiny depressions are etched on both sides of the blank. This process consists of a rough etch, rinse, precision etch, rinse, and plating. An infrared light controls the precision etch process to the exact desired dimensions. Next, by the use of suitable jets, the infinitesimal dots on opposite sides of the transistor blank are plated. Another rinse, drying, and a punch-through measurement to make sure closest tolerances are met follow. Now the blanks, before leads are attached, are given another rigid inspection. If this test is passed satisfactorily, an emitter lead and a collector lead will all be automatically positioned. This operation is so minute that a powerful double microscope is required to observe it. This Philco-developed machine pushed back old barriers in transistor production and became responsible for new advances in transistor reliability. After the partially assembled germanium surface barrier transistors have had their leads and glass base attached, they're given a final cleanup etch in which the bath solution is only used once. Then to vacuum ovens where they're baked at high temperature. From the vacuum baking ovens, they're transferred directly to huge plastic cases. The atmosphere within these cases is bone dry. In this moisture-free atmosphere, trained technicians sitting outside the plastic case and working with rubber gloves through air-sealed apertures subject the transistor to many various checks and tests to determine its characteristics and make sure it meets the high standards of future performance that Philco has set for it. If it passes, its top is placed on and precision projection welded, providing a permanent seal so that air, moisture, dust, and light can never enter its interior. Then into a bake-out oven it goes for 15 hours. Transistors which survive under these high temperatures will give the greatest future dependability. It is then checked out to various electrical parameters at different voltages under the most exacting conditions. In final checking for power transistors, there is one miraculous machine that tests 7 complicated electrical characteristics with a scorching speed of 7 seconds. Capable of handling 550 completed transistors an hour, it automatically rejects any faulty units the second it spots an error. From each day's run, finished transistors are selected at random for life tests. Extended life tests approximate as high a lifespan as 20 years actual and continuous use in the field. In addition to the surface barrier transistor, which went into mass production at Philco in 1955, rapid gains in research culminated in the development of new methods for producing an alloy junction in which the material penetrated into the semiconductor only 1/1,000,000th of an inch. This new transistor, named microalloy, had a gain of 10 times that of the surface barrier, making the two a perfect pair in computer circuits, one giving speed, the other high gain. Philco also makes alloy junction power transistors from the tiniest imaginable for hearing aids to larger sizes that power auto radios. Recently into production have gone new high-frequency silicon transistors, which are superior to anything yet built for dependability and performance. Today, Philco transistors are serving in a number of products for government and industry where great dependability is required. They serve in the complicated equipment required for the guidance of all types of missiles. Into the panels that control computers and data process equipment go hundreds of Philco transistors forming the electronic brains of these fabulous modern machines. In home entertainment, Philco all-transistor radios are the top-performing portables in the radio world, so dependable in performance and long life that a Philco became the first radio ever to bear a 5-year guarantee. In hearing aids, the tiniest transistors bring the world of sound conveniently back to those unfortunates who have lost it. Radios using Philco transistors have been built into helmets worn by our infantry so that they can be in constant communications with their command posts. In the electronic systems of jet aircraft navigational and fire control equipment, Philco transistors have more than justified the faith placed in them by our Air Force. The discovery and production of Philco transistors is a masterpiece of scientific engineering genius and a witness to the ingenuity of modern technicians. And now it can be revealed that when the first Earth satellite is launched in this geophysical year, Philco transistors will be at the heart of its communication system, electronically reporting back from outer space. Philco transistors were chosen by the United States government due to their superior performance and extreme dependability. Another triumph of Philco advanced research, as Philco transistors journeying through the black night of space send back descriptions of new scientific discoveries. The future of transistors is all before us. Their use and application has only just become known. Future technological advances will undoubtedly create tasks only they can perform. And in this future, Philco transistors will stride like modern Gullivers through Lilliputian lands to new achievements for mankind.
Good old American hype, don't you love it? Philco transistors, 1956, right at the start of the germanium revolution, which led on to the silicon revolution, which led on to the chip revolution, which led on to the computer bubble. This is VK3 Alpha Mike Lima with the regular Saturday night test transmission. And I'm going to shift gear now from videos and film to an area that's more familiar to me and to people like Stephen Langley 3SL, and that is recorded sound. Now, just in the last couple of years, there's been a rediscovery, I should say, of some very important technical documents, recordings, test recordings, most of them unissued, documenting the first use of sound recording to record ambient sound, street noises. And this happened with the Columbia Record Company in Britain in 1928, 94 years ago. I'll just bring up a bit of video to show you a bit of background to this. About 12 months ago, there was a paper. Hang on, I'll just try and open this. A paper published in Britain. You see it there on the screen. It's available in PDF format on the net, called London Street Noises, a groundbreaking field recording campaign from 1928 by John Drever, Azugul Yildirim and Mattia Kobianchi. And just reading the abstract. In a leading article by Sir Percival Phillips in the UK popular newspaper The Daily Mail, July 16, 1928, came the following headlines: Millions lost by noise, city's worst plague, menace to nerves and health, what is being done to stop the noise? The article was supported by research from Professor Henry J. Spooner, who'd been researching and campaigning on the ill effects of noise and its economic impact. The article sparked subsequent discussion and follow-up articles in the Daily Mail and its international partners. In an era of rapid technological change, radio, television, talking pictures, that was on the cusp of implementing sound pressure measurements, the Daily Mail, in collaboration with the Columbia Graphophone Company, experimented with sound recording technology and commentary in the field to help communicate perceived loudness and identify the sources of unnecessary city noise. This resulted in the making of a series of environmental sound recordings, some of the first, from 5 locations across central London during September 1928, the findings of which were documented and discussed in the Daily Mail at the time. 2 recordings were commercially released by Columbia on shellac gramophone disc. More were produced on test pressings never issued that have only recently come to light. This was probably the first concerted anti-noise campaign of its type and scale, requiring huge technological effort at the time. The regulatory bodies and politicians of the time reviewed and improved the policies around urban noise shortly after the presentations of these landmark recordings, which were also broadcast from the BBC both nationally and internationally on shortwave, and many members of the public congratulated and thanked the Daily Mail for such an initiative. Despite its unprecedented scale and impact and the recent scholarly attention on the history of anti-noise campaigning, the paper that was written by Drever, Yildirim and Kobianchi charted and contextualised the Daily Mail's London Street Noise campaign for the first time, and that was only published in February 2021. Now, who was behind all of this? The answer is that a very interesting person from the Royal Navy with journalistic aspirations, I'll just bring up his image there, Commander H.M. Daniel, an interesting character. He had been a commander on the HMS Royal Oak one of the largest of the British ships in the Royal Navy, and had an argument in 1928 with his commander. An argument that got him almost it did get him a court-martial, but not particularly strong conviction. But thereafter he, being a fairly eloquent chap, looked for alternative employment and found it with the Daily Mail as a correspondent in technology, particularly as regards defence technology, but also in terms of the measurement and reduction of urban noise. So Daniel accompanied the Columbia location recording truck, then new technology, and they recorded in 5 locations, one in the East End of London at Whitechapel. Their first recording was recorded on the 4th of September 1928. The second at a hospital for women. Hang on, I've jumped ahead a picture there. I'll just hold that still. A hospital for women, and this was the most politically sensitive recording. They stuck a microphone out a window of the women's hospital where they were dealing with people who were pregnant and having pregnancies, and just the amount of noise recorded from London at that time. Horse transport, trams clanging along the road, cable trams and electric trams, and motor lorries, which before the days of synchromesh gearing and automatic transmission had to all double declutch with the old manual gear change. And finally, 2 recordings from the residential part of the West End, where the commander knew that he could get some political support from bigwigs in South Kensington and Knightsbridge. And the Knightsbridge one is particularly interesting in that they caught not only the street noises but buskers going past. So let's go back 94 years. If you have decent loudspeakers on your computer, please use them. I've gone to considerable trouble to get these recordings flat in frequency response from 40 hertz to 6 kilohertz, which was pretty good going for 1928, with pretty good surface noise. The noise is fairly low. These were preserved in the Museum of London for 94 years and have only recently been digitised, so they haven't had very much wear. But let's have a listen to the first of the recordings, which was cut at Aldgate in East London, as you'll see and hear.
You are now about to listen to traffic noises which were recorded at the junction of Aldgate, Whitechapel and Commercial Street. This spot is a very busy thoroughfare, as practically all traffic going east from London, north of the Thames, passes by it. There are tram lines which cross each other, and the streets are paved with stone.
That was Commander Daniel. And that is the sound of trucks with solid rubber tyres bouncing along cobblestone streets. We don't see cobblestone streets anymore. Now, this first recording doesn't have any commentary. It was the first time that they'd recorded out of doors with the sound truck, just general London noises, so at first they didn't think it was necessary. There's a picture of the recording being made with the hanging microphone up high above the street as motor omnibuses and trams, double-decker trams, go past. Photo from the Daily Mail, not very distinct. But in subsequent recordings, Commander Daniel actually does a narration of what we're listening to. There you can hear some horses going by, and klaxon horns, which we don't hear anymore. Let's move on to the next location that he recorded. 3 days later, the 7th of September 1928.
This record is being taken in a ward for women patients of St. George's Hospital at about 2 o'clock on the afternoon of Friday, the 7th of September, 1928. The microphone is facing Grosvenor Place. Here comes a motor bus.
And this is the first time that London traffic had been recorded.
Here comes a lorry with the engine knocking. A motorcycle.
And there's the microphone hanging out of the hospital window. This record, more than any of the others, actually shocked... Oh, klaxon horn.
A quite unnecessary motor horn.
Ha! Thank you, Commander Daniel. This shocked the authorities into doing something about noise.
That horn was quite unnecessary. A motor bus. Here comes a horse cart. Motor bus. Here comes a big lorry. Motor buses.
Moving on to the next recording, the middle of London, Leicester Square.
This record is being taken in Leicester Square at 2:30 on the afternoon of Tuesday, the 11th of September, 1928. There is, for the moment, almost a complete lull in the traffic. Two very silent taxis have just passed. The hammering noise is from some building operations which are out of sight.
London in September 1928. Well, that's the centre of the city. Let's move on to Cromwell Road, somewhat out west, on the 19th of September 1928, 1 week later. Oh, a klaxon horn.
This record is being taken in Cromwell Road, just to the westward of Queen's Gate, at noon on Wednesday, the 19th of September.
And that's a busker's orchestra. A trumpet? I think you'll be able to hear a banjo and spoons.
That was a big lorry. That was a motor bus. A big steam lorry has just passed. Two private cars and a taxi. A big freight van.
And I think the buskers are playing something from Faust.
A big private car. Two quiet lorries. A complete lull. The street musicians have just finished that tune.
Notice he's there. Pause. Tune.
A large dray is just turning up Queen's Gate.
Let's move on to another part of suburban London, Beecham Place, off
This
Brompton
record
Road.
is being taken in Beecham Place, a side street off Brompton Road, at midday on Thursday, the 20th of September, 1928. 3 taxis have just gone by. There is now a lull. 2 private cars are just coming up. Quite a lot of motor cars and heavy lorries come down these side streets. In the hope of escaping the congestion of the main streets and so speeding up their progress. That is a boy whistling on the opposite pavement. A horse van is coming up and a motor lorry trying to overtake it. A big private car is just moving away on the opposite side of the pavement, the street.
I'll jump forward a bit because there's another section.
A lorry.
If I can find it.
A taxi.
Another street musician starts up, another busker. And he's a violinist. And he's terrible.
This record is being taken in Beecham Place, a side street off Brumpton Road, at 1 o'clock on the afternoon of Thursday, the 20th of September, 1928. Here comes a big lorry. Another big lorry coming up from the other direction. And yet another one. A fiddler has started to play on the pavement opposite. A private car and a taxi.
His violin sounds like a blowfly.
Here comes a big steam lorry up the street. It had a big trailer behind it. Three horse wagons are coming along from Pont Street. Two private cars and a taxi.
Well, bad buskers are still with us to this day. This is VK3AML. You've just heard the earliest recordings made of London street sounds, specifically to the order of the Daily Mail newspaper, following their starting of a controversy of the effect on the health of Londoners of the excessive amount of noise they had without any noise limiting legislation in 1928, 94 years ago. So these recordings, by the then new technology of location electrical recording by recording truck, which was done there by Columbia Records, which you may have seen the documentary on their factory at Wandsworth some time back on this channel. They pioneered the recording of London street sounds and used those recordings to politicise the need for the abatement of noise in London. It was one of the first times that had been done, and certainly the first time that recording had been used. In Melbourne, around that time, there was also noise abatement law enacted, and I remember talking to Roy Driver, who was in 1931 or 2, a junior talking picture cameraman for Herschel's films in Jollymont, and he was he told me between laughs, this is about 45 years ago that he told me this, that a woman who lived next to a particularly noisy dairy, not sure where it was, I think it was in Caulfield, wanted the newsreel truck of Herschel's films, normally used for the Melbourne Herald newsreel, to come out and record the awful noise out of the local dairy, the horses, the delivery of the bottles that would start at 4 o'clock in the morning in those days. So Roy Driver went out with the truck, set up the recording equipment and filmed them from as much cover as he could get as the trucks came out. And that was the first time, to my knowledge, that a film was presented in an Australian courtroom to try and gain a conviction for excessive noise. And Roy would just say, he said to me, "You should have seen the dairyman come up to me and threaten me afterwards." He was just the messenger. He was not the person doing the complaint. So I don't know whether that film survives. It would be interesting to see. But in my childhood, there were still milk delivery horses in East Hawthorne, Ireland's dairy in, I think, Miami Street or Murnion Grove, near Anderson's Park in East Hawthorne, used to have their delivery Clydesdales taking milk from door to door, and the rattle of the milk bottles coming out at about 5 or 6 in the morning was frequently the first noise of the new day that we would hear. How that's all changed. No milk deliveries now. There used to be milk deliveries, bread deliveries, and sometimes meat deliveries from the butcher. But that was the 1950s for you. I'm starting to sound very old. VK3AML. We're working our way towards 11 o'clock tonight for callback. And as I think I said earlier, I'm going to try to do the callback initially on radio, and then we'll see what happens when Zoom opens up on the same internet connection that I'm doing this live stream on. I've got a feeling that the whole thing will fall in a heap, in which case we'll have a truncated session tonight. Just answering first of all the people on the talkback on text. The text box was invaded by commercial spam tonight. Love chat XYZ, best adult dating. Well, if any of you blokes are young enough to take advantage of it, maybe you should go there and give them your sexual preferences, whatever they might be. John D, did I just get some hair in the gate? John, these documentary films are frequently run off on a semi-amateur basis by people onto internet. Let's just be thankful that there is some access to them after 60 or 70 years. But in the case of the Humphrey Jennings films pre-war, they were very nice transfers done off 35mm film. So they vary incredibly depending on where you get them from on YouTube. Some of them are as low as 240p definition. I try to avoid those. Some are as high as 4K, but they're a rarity. Most are around 720 or 1080. And I try to upscale them all before streaming them here to 1080p, so that the conversion software has to do the minimum amount of CPU usage when I upload. Would love to find out which dairy it was. I have it on file, John. There was an article in the Melbourne Herald Staff magazine which I photostated. I think it was 1932 or 33 that incident occurred, but I do know that Melbourne was one of the first cities in the world to enact an excess noise legislation, so that when you go and complain about your next door neighbour playing disco music till 4 a.m, you have some basis to take action these days. You didn't, apparently, in London up to 1928. John Young mentioning with that ham radio film made by Pete Smith, the glide ratio of pre-war aircraft wasn't that bad. I think they had to hype it up in the studio to make it look really bad, as if nobody could survive the fall of a plane that was dropping like a brick. But wood and wickerwork biplanes tended to glide rather nicely, as far as I'm aware. OH&S is mentioned with the earlier documentary films on the making of the Cooling Marshes film. Did you notice that the coax wasn't cable, it was a form of hardline manufactured on site, and to lower it into the trench they needed about 200 people spaced about 3 metres apart to drop each of their copper tubes they were at that stage into the trench, the start of coaxial technology. VK3FTJS, great to see you there, Terry. VK3 Pirate, g'day Greg, you don't fool me. Harry Thal, good evening to you, and I hope there's more of the love chat best adult dating. You wonder why they persist. So let's first of all go on the air, so I'll change my monitoring position to off mixer. And we'll open up on air at 3 minutes to 11, a little bit earlier than normal. And hopefully there'll be somebody there to talk. So this is VK3 Alpha Mike Lima. Initially, before opening Zoom, we'll have a chat on the air, because I'm not convinced we're not going to lose the lot by wanting too much out of the bandwidth that I have available. VK3AML calling CQ now on 147.475 and standing by for any calls.
VK3 Alpha Charlie Zulu.
We've only got VK3ACZ tonight. Sounds like Dave isn't there. How are you, Peter? Hope you've had a good week, and I hope you received all of that before. And I see we've got 23 people on the stream, so there must be something of interest for people there. VK3ACZ and the group, VK3AML.
VK3AML returning to VK3ACZ. Surprised that Dave or Graham or Gary haven't shown up yet. Perhaps some of them will. But anyway, I don't think you could do any better than that look at the transistor factory. That was absolutely stunning. And when you said American hype, oh no, I didn't mind at all. It was just incredible. Did you see that huge room full of long tables with what must have been a couple of hundred employees there? Stunning stuff. The second video that they showed crossing the Atlantic there with the radio, the sideband radio phone, saw that a couple of months ago at the Sherbrooke Radio Club, which is a quick reminder for you, Chris, that the Sherbrooke Radio Club meeting is on this coming Monday night. Be there or be square. Well, I hope you're going to be there anyway. But I didn't mind seeing it a second time. In fact, I got even more out of it, but I loved how they were able to get around the problem of multipathing and signals cancelling themselves out. All those trenches that they dug and the huge amount of plumbing there, it was fantastic stuff. And for your recordings, Bad Buskers still with us. Yikes, yeah. Very, very interesting. But as I said, nothing captured me more than the junction transistors. That's just me personally. Other people might find other things were even better. And I was contemplating why I love going back so much in history, the recorded history that you share with us with recordings and videos. And it suddenly occurred to me that the real reason is that I go back to the mid-60s in primary school when we were taken into before the school even had their own television set, we were taken into a big room and shown movie tone news clips of all the similar sort of stuff to what you've been showing over the months. So for nostalgia purposes, it's taking me back to that primary school time, and I can't thank you enough for that. But anyway, terrific broadcast tonight. Looking forward to what's going to happen with the rest of it, and hope some others come up to join us on the Simplex chat. VK3AML, and hoping you're well and you've had a great week there, Chris. VK3ACZ.
Have we got any other breakers? VK3AML, standing by.
VK3DLW.
Yeah, good day, Graham. VK3DLW, no doubt we'll see you on Monday too, Graham. At Sherbrooke Radio Club, which meets at the Baronia Methodist Church, I think, in Pine Avenue, Baronia. If anybody's interested and is from the eastern suburbs, the general area, they might care to call in and meet the group who are into, in a great measure, they're into field radio and setting up camps in the bush to test radio gear with remote power and from low noise sources. Interesting. The transistor film, my memory of my first encounters with germanium transistors, which were just on the way out when I was on the way into the hobby, is that they were incredibly expensive, like a very ordinary transistor, OC44, OC45, AC127, OC71 was the audio transistor, I think. Mediocre beta by modern standards, mediocre HFE. They were subject to thermal runaway, so you had to be very careful with bias. And they cost, I think, in the order of cost £2 or £3 for a single transistor back in the early 60s, and that's the equivalent of about a quarter of a weekly wage. So when you said you had a 7-transistor radio, you were saying you've got some fairly toffee stuff in those days. I can see the number of people are coming up now that we're having the callback, because I've announced that we're going to do it on Zoom shortly, and I bet a lot of people are trying to see me fail. Well, you might just be in luck. Because this second computer I've got here for Zoom is only an i3, not very grunty, and it's operating through an independent Ethernet cable to our modem. No switcher in there. We had a switcher we tried on Thursday night and it didn't work properly, so I'm hoping that this will give the bandwidth a bit of an edge so that we can run live streaming and Zoom at the same time. I'm not even sure that I know how to connect to Zoom properly, but we'll see. I'll hand it round to Graham, VK3DLW, with a pause for any other breakers. Hope you've had a good week, Graham, and looking forward to seeing you on Monday night if you're heading there. VK3DLW, VK3AML.
Yeah, VK3AML, VK3DLW. Yeah, Roger, Chris, and good evening, Peter. Yeah, I'm interested. I've just been busily, I don't know how it's going to go either, installing. Well, I got Zoom on my iPhone, I got Zoom on the iPad, and I got Zoom on my very old Vista-based computer. So if it works on my old Vista computer, it ought to work on your i3, I would think, without a problem. But I'm hoping it'll work on one of them, but I'm just wondering what your plan is, whether you're going to give out a meeting ID at some stage or whatever, so we can join. But yes, it was fascinating info tonight. The thing that it reminded me of was the old, I don't know whether you remember them or not, there were the old Philips electronics kits. There was a basic kit you could buy and there was an extension kit. And I think I acquired both of those as a young lad through Christmas and birthday presents. And it basically had what was really a masonite board. You put down a sort of a cardboard circuit template, had a bunch of spring-mounted bits for you to connect components to, and I seem to remember the active components were something like AC 127s or AC 128s, but in the end I still have the Morse code sounder where I basically cannibalized all the bits out of that kit and made that sounder and used it for teaching Morse at Kilkenny Technical College. But it was, yeah, so it ended up, the components ended up made into a bit more robust solution. But yeah, so it took me back to that, and that would have been in the 60s, I would think, back when I was in high school. So yes, germanium transistors were certainly the thing at that point. But yes, by the time I got my license here, they were disappearing out the door. Although the 1674, the thing I first got on 2-meter FM with, had germanium transistors in its inverter, or inverter power supply, but also a lot of 6AK5s. VK3AML, and yes, I will be seeing you Monday night, incidentally. VK3AML in the group, VK3DLW.
I left a pause. VK3DLW, VK3AML. Yeah, interesting. My friend Roland Legg, later Detective Inspector Roland Legg, partly, I think, of the Homicide Squad, now retired. We were buddies in primary school, lived 2 streets apart, and I got a Japanese Elico electronics kit for Christmas 1965 when I was 11, and I think Roland got his kit either that year, Christmas 65, or may have been Christmas 66, and the two of us did some experiments with combining our electronics kits in new and unexpected ways, and spent a lot of our time in the 60s crawling over roofs or crawling up trees with bits of wire and trying to disentangle them from the trees intervening to get the highest possible inverted L antenna, and to hear things that we'd never heard before on shortwave radio. And there was a lot to listen to in the mid and late 60s, particularly in the sunspot maximum of 1969 or thereabouts. God, I'll never forget that. That was at the peak usage of HF radio for utility purposes and for international broadcasting. I was on the mailing list of Radio Nederland, where I was a fan of Eddie Starts and the Happy Station program. It sounds so twee now, looking back 50 or more years. A lot more than 50 years, actually. But I still have some of the QSL cards. I think I can see them there. If I hold them up. There's the QSL card to Master Chris Long. Gosh. From Quito, Ecuador, of HCJB. I'll just try and hold it, which shows their diesel generator and the world's run and their backup with the world's highest power line up in the Andes. Christian broadcasting station, long gone now. I think they have an outlet in northwest Australia, up near Wyndham somewhere now. What else have we got here? Here's me Radio Nederland card, and it's from April 1967. Have a look on the back there. I was 13. And I think this was sent to me personally by Eddie Starts of Radio Nederland, and they were commemorating Expo 67 at Montreal at that stage. The people that lived opposite us, the Harris family, the daughter of the family, Berenice Harris, then in her 40s or 50s, I think, worked for Romberg and Boyd, the architects, and she supervised the construction of the Australian Pavilion at Expo 67. So I saw quite a bit of the sort of fallout of that. What else have we got here in the way of QSLs? Not much more in the way of broadcast ones, I think. Oh, New Zealand Broadcasting Corporation, 1968. When I was 14, I think. July 1968, I would have just turned 14. And interestingly, it's medium wave DX for this one. Two-way Wellington, which was on about 560 kilohertz, I think. It was on a 570 kilohertz, I should say, from Wellington, and it was one of the few Australasian stations then transmitting 100 kilowatts at the bottom end of the broadcast band. So most nights you could hear 2YA quite clearly fading in and out from 2,000 odd miles away. No, I think, here we are. Another deceased radio company, the International Broadcasting Outlet of Radio Canada. And I was listening on 31 metres in April 1967, 9625 kilohertz. And that's my family home address on there, 6 Torring Road, Hawthorne East. Don't go looking for it, folks. The house was demolished in 1997, sadly, so there's nothing left of our old radio gear or earthing on that site. As far as I know, it was completely demolished. Bulldozers came in and bulldozed it down, and now there is 3 large 2-storey houses on the site where we had one house originally. But that was where we did all of the HF receiving, and my friend Roland and I were reminiscing the other day. We met at a cafe in Taronga Road, Hawthorne, near the old stamping ground, and we were reminiscing about that Philips radio kit over a cup of coffee the other day, and Roland said that there was a high-gain amplifier where they would use a speaker as a microphone, and somewhere in the instructions it said you can actually hear the footfalls of a fly if you can get them to land on the speaker. And some of the means that we tried to do to get flies to land on speakers, I can remember picking up a piece of dog feces and holding it down near the speaker in an attempt to get a fly to land on it. We didn't have very much success. I don't think we ever succeeded. We had the high gain amplifier working, but never could get the fly to land on the right place. VK3ACZ with a pause for any breakers. VK3AML.
Yeah, VK3AML in what I can now say group. VK3ACZ returning, and good evening to you, Graham. So glad you came in to join us, so it wasn't just Chris and I on our lonesome for now. Hope all's good with you. Anyway, a funny old week it's been for amateur radio, or should I say HFDX this week. The solar flux has been dropping and dropping. I think a week ago it was about 170 something. It's now down to 93. I tried to do the 15-metre ANSA today and could not hear a single VK. There were quite a few on, as I found out, because three stateside stations kept relaying all the information. I never cease to be amused, puzzled and surprised by amateur radio, that you can have situations like that where I couldn't hear anything within 2,000 Ks, but stations 12,000 Ks away are 5 by 9. But there you go. And I'm still doing marvellous things with a magnetic base on a car on 20 metres, go figure. It shouldn't be absolutely ideal, but I had a 5.9 both ways with Echo Alpha, EA7, Juliet Queen Alpha. Shouldn't be 5.9 both ways when he's running heaps of power and I'm running a magnetic base off a car, but there you go. And he seemed to be giving genuine signal reports, because I was listening to him for the few before me and the few that came after, and he had no trouble calling signals good or bad or whatever, well sorry, good or poor or whatever. But anyway, that's a bit of waffle about other things. Saw a little bit of your test transmission on Thursday. Didn't watch it through to the end because it looked like, yes, it was just a test there with I can't remember the lass's name. Was it Andrea? But anyway, interesting to see what you make of this Zoom thing. I'm looking forward, like Graham, to see what becomes of all that. But nothing much else to say. Just, again, super impressed with the transistor factory in Pennsylvania there. That was pretty good. VK3AML on the group, VK3ACZ.
VK3ACZ and the group VK3 Alpha Mike Lima. Interesting about the Spanish contact, and you're right, her name was Andrea. She's an F call, but I can't remember the call sign. I don't think she uses it much. She used to work for Mike Manger Spectrade, which Mike's dead now, but the shop that Spectrade, the computer recycling shop, was in, is now the toy shop. It was taken over by Slim and is now strictly ham. So that's where she worked. She now works in computer setup. She was helping me to set up the second computer here. And I've got Zoom running, but I can't see that anybody's joined it. So Participants 1, me. Oh dear. It's Chris Long's personal Zoom meeting. I don't know what that means and how people can actually join it. Does anybody know what I have to give other people for them to be able to join? Only one participant still. Oh dear. I am a Zoom moron. A moron in other ways too, my wife would say. But yeah, the information on early transistor technology. Transistor technology was in very rapid change during the 50s and 60s. They went from point contact transistors, which had all sorts of problems with beta going up to the point where they became unstable because of metal migration, with early point contact transistors, which had a, collector currents possible in the microamps range, I think, initially. Then they went to junction transistors, which you saw in that Philco film. Then they could, in the late 50s, take a bit of power with a TO3 style case. And finally, the progression to silicon transistors and NPN technology, a lot of that germanium technology was PNP. What is the meeting number? Where do I hate to sound dumb, but where do I find the meeting number? Meeting number, chat. So chat previews, participants 1, copy invite link. Invite link has been copied to clipboard, but who do I send it to? Does anybody know where I find the meeting number to invite people? VK3DLW in group, VK3AML.
VK3AML, VK3DLW. I presume you've initiated a meeting, as in hosting a meeting, and somewhere in there, in that hosting arrangement, should be a meeting ID, but you will need to tell that to people. It did also ask, the other alternative was the personal link name, but when I put your name in, it just came and asked me for a password anyway. So I think the general strategy is to have a meeting ID, and having set it up as hosting somewhere in your setup, not necessarily on the page that you're viewing on, there should be a meeting ID if you've set it up as host. So not having it running here as a host at the moment, I can't give any more guidance than that, I don't think. Yeah, so yes, that's what's going to be necessary, either to put in in your live chat or to announce it over the air, Chris. So yeah, one of those two things will be necessary. And the thing I remember about Expo 67 was that there was you could write to the Parker Pen Pavilion and ask for a pen pal, and I ended up with a couple of pen pals out of that. And both of whom seemed to be pretty interested in radio and about my age group, and I communicated with them for a number of years, but what became of them after that I don't know. Yes, well, after the electronics, my strategy generally was to try and scour the neighbourhood for old radios, either pre-octal or post-octal, and pull them apart and make other radios. Sounds a bit weird, but gee, I learned a lot out of doing that. I also learnt how dangerous electrodynamic speakers are, because the old radio that my parents had the ability to put an extension speaker on it, and all it had at the back was an angled aluminium bracket with the socket on it, which my fingers went round the back of, and I ended up doing a somersault across the concrete floor of the garage. So that was my experience with a fairly severe electric shock. I learned very quickly more detail about how electrodynamic speakers work, because of course the coil in the speaker was actually acting as part of the DC filtering for the supply rather than a choke. Now I know. VK3AML in the group. Hope you're having some luck with your meeting ID, VK3DLW.
Well, I've succeeded in getting VK3ND on. I can't hear him as yet. He's connecting to audio. Oh, hang on. Talk, Greg. Can you hear me? There he is. We've succeeded in getting it going. I wonder if it's going to last.
Hello.
Can you hear me, Greg?
Yeah, I've had to turn the tally off because it's running very far behind what you're trying to do.
Should I speak through this, or is it coming through the webcam? Hello.
Yeah, you sound all right. I don't know what you're coming through.
Sounds okay. Okay.
Yeah.
So we've actually got... How did you get into this, Greg? If you can tell us how you did it, others will find out.
And you've only got the picture of Tilly. Oh, there you
No, I've got you.
All right, the TV is running very slow behind you.
Okay, and you're going out on 2 metres via me.
I dialed your name in and it's got you out of contacts, and then it's sent a request to you.
Okay. So if anybody else wants to get in, what is it called? Chris Long's personal chat or something? Or
no, I just typed in Chris Long because you're in there as a user.
Yeah.
For your emails in there, it's obviously sent you a request. But generally, you have to send out a number, which is about 10 digits long, and a password, and send it out or email it out to everyone, and they can all log in and sit there, and then you let them in the room.
Okay, so if they have my email address, they can actually log in, can they?
Yeah, I think we might have only just set up a personal call between the two of us.
Okay.
You might not be able to let other people in. I don't know.
Right.
Other people want to try and log into you.
Yes. Just hang on a sec. I'm just getting rid of some spam best adult dating site. They've come back again.
I wouldn't worry about that. From what I've heard on the other sites that have got chat groups, you really need someone else to just sit there and hit delete while you do your show.
I've hit delete now, so they've gone. And in answer to the question about Shortwave Australia from Pirate, as far as I know, Dave is now transmitting every day from 3 p.m. to about 9, where he gets drowned out a little bit by that Holy Roller station from Nashville, Tennessee. I don't know which way to look. If I look to the right, Greg sees me looking at him. If I look to the left, LiveStream sees me looking at them. So I'll sit back a little bit.
I'm watching the telly in delay, so it's a bit strange.
Well, it's 30 seconds delay, so you'd be seeing me 30 seconds ago. It's a good thing that you're not putting the audio through, otherwise you'd be really confused.
I've had to turn it off.
Okay, so we can actually work this simultaneously with LiveStream. That's very good.
So there you are on the big TV.
Now all I have to do is to figure out how to let people get in. Click on participants, then invite. Okay, thanks, Rolly. Rolly in Auckland is watching. So participants 2, then invite Chris Long, host me. Rolly, can you send me an invitation? We need the meeting ID, as Arden mentioned. How do I find the meeting ID? Do you know, Greg?
You have to set it when you start it up, I think.
Oh, dear. So how do I find it? Meeting information. Meeting information ID. Okay, people, listen carefully. Get your pen. It's a 7-figure number. 833 606 3126. I'll repeat that. It's 833 606 3126. And do I have to give a passcode too, or is that my information?
Usually you do have to put a passcode in.
Participant ID, numeric passcode. Telephone room systems only. Passcode 9 small d 5 GY3. I don't know whether I've given that something. Can anybody at the top of the next screen you can see the meeting ID and password? Yeah, I've got that. So now if anybody cares to call in, we're standing by. There's Greg, VK3 November Delta, and myself, and we've succeeded in getting Zoom running with LiveStream. I'm really surprised. I honestly didn't think that we had enough bandwidth for this. Are you seeing me in the right ratio, Greg, on the Zoom?
Yeah, you're in 16:9, but you're only a little postage stamp up in the corner of the screen.
Yeah, it's not like LiveStream where you've got the full 1080p. I'm aware of that.
The two dogs here are really interested in this show that you're putting on, of course.
How long's he been dead? Is that dog stuffed?
Tilly, the one on the green row, or they're both green, the darker green,
yeah,
was supposed to have passed away 6 weeks ago and still going strong.
All right, I'll just...
She's riddled with cancer, and Scruffy, who's down there on the floor, he pokes his head up every now and again to make sure that I'm still here. He's going well. He's 11, so he's all right.
I'm just trying to adjust the video cameras so it's Repeat passcode giving case of all letters. Okay, Graham. I better put this back up here, and for future reference I'll have to get some means of getting one screen onto the other system.
Once you've got it going, you can just send it out to everybody and as an email.
Again, okay. The meeting ID 833-606-3126 and the passcode figure 9, small d, figure 5, capital G, capital Y, 3. Yep, good, that's it, you got it, Mark. So if anybody else cares to call in, we'll take as many as we can up to and including the time at which the whole thing falls over. Okay. 3B double Y is up there. Hang on. Admit. Joining. I wonder how many. This is like, oh, there's Rolly. 3B double Y is connected. Connecting audio. And seems to be working.
Yes. I must have audio or I have echo.
Hello, Mr. B double Y.
Yep. And your camera on.
And Harry Thau, let's get him in.
We'll take as many as we can up to and including the time at which the whole thing falls over.
You're hearing me with 30 seconds delay.
Hello.
Hello, Harry.
Hang on, admit.
There we go.
Harry, are you the guy I know through early television website?
This is like, there's Rolly. 3B double.
I'm not too sure.
Audio.
Just for ident as well, 2 metres there, VK3AML, VK7HXT.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm not too sure, but I do talk to you through the chat there. I absolutely love the videos and love the live stream.
You want to see me?
Okay. Somebody is playing me through a speaker which is feeding back. I should have said, once you're connected via Zoom, please don't use the stream.
Yeah, I've got my YouTube down, so...
G'day, Rolly.
There's no relay.
Nice to see you again, Rolly. It's nice to actually have this thing working.
Tell them to turn that camera.
Now the madness starts, so you can mute Chris.
What I'll do is I'll monitor off the radio for a moment, just to make sure everybody's at the right level. Have a talk, Rolly. You're going over 2 metres in Melbourne. You got that, Rolly? He's looking on delay, I think. Hello, Rolly. Can you hear us?
Hey, Google.
G'day. I just unmuted myself.
Okay.
Yeah, I just unmuted myself to stop the chaos, that's all.
Okay. Yeah, it's likely to be chaos on the first night, but it looks like we've achieved streaming. G'day, BYY. G'day, Harry.
Can you see me all right?
Yeah, I can see. This is amazing. Whereabouts are you, Harry?
So I'm located in Hobart, in the northern suburbs of Hobart. Traffic about 5 to 15 minutes drive, depending on how the traffic's going.
Okay.
It's been pretty cold the last few days too, so really cold.
Okay. Are you near, what's the name of that famous gallery at Claremont? Just trying to think of the name.
Oh, Mona.
Mona, yeah. Are you near there?
Yes. Not too far. That's probably about another 5 minutes drop, less than that for me.
Okay.
So really nice and close, and yeah, I've been there once. It's absolutely wonderful. All the exhibits underground, and the Mona Ferry as well, which I haven't had a chance to go on yet. So
yeah, if I'm looking away, it's not because I'm not taking notice of you, Harry. It's I've got that camera and the stream and the mixer and the transmitter.
No, that's all good. I've got you. I'm probably doing the same thing. I've got the iPhone with the zoom on, and my iPad Pro just watching the relay as well. So
great.
You're coming in quite nice. That connection's doing really good.
Yeah, we had a switcher the other day on a single Ethernet cable, and for some strange reason we just could not get the two computers working together with the switcher. What I've done is I've run a second 25-metre cable. It took a lot of persuading from my wife to let it through the rest of the house. So that there are two cables going to the. I shouldn't do that. That's not intentional. There are two cables going to the modem, which is paradoxically at the other end of the house near the street. We're out the back. You know, the amateur.
Oh, wowzers.
We always get the back next to the toilet, you know.
See, with my HF, I'm kind of similar. I run the coax, the RG58 coax from my unit all the way up to the backyard,
right?
Up to a inverted V dipole. So, I definitely know the feeling of running a long cable from one spot to another.
Yeah, I'm just admitting one more, and TJ. Yep. So we've got Graham Thomas with his bicycle, and TJ. G'day, Terry. Oh, somebody's feeding back.
It's all right. I turned the radio down now. You've finally admitted me.
Yeah. Wear a pair of headphones, you bastard.
All right. Why would I want to do that?
It looks like this is going to work as a system. The only problem that I've got is that on this monitor screen, I went to the local computer shop and got a new video card, and it reproduces everything as if it's optimised for a 4:3 aspect ratio. So everything I see on my 16:9 screen is stretched horizontally. So I look like I weigh about 25 stone, you know? It's there's got to be something. G'day, TJ. Finally I see you, the first time in about a year. Gosh, I don't think I've seen you since those Zoom hookups. You got rid of your beard. Didn't you have a beard at one stage, TJ? Yeah. Okay.
Certainly did.
Yeah, these are people that I normally speak to on a daily basis, but I see them so irregularly. G'day, Graham, too. So we've got almost the whole crew on here now. Peter's iPhone. Oh, right, hang on. Here comes Pete. Let's admit him. Let's see how many... It's like putting Arabs in a mini miner, you know, the thing that you used to do in...
How many have we got now there, Chris?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Peter is on his iPhone.
Yeah, the video is starting to get a little bit jerky, so I think you might be pushing the bandwidth a little bit.
Let's just see on the... No, it looks reasonably okay on the stream. It's just a little bit jerky on the Zoom, but the audio's okay. The one who...
Usually when it comes to like conference and streaming, they're slightly different.
Yeah.
So stream, it's more of a single output stream. It's not input and output.
Right.
As compared to say Zoom or Skype.
Yeah, and
if that makes sense.
The person who really deserves the medal tonight is Rowley in Auckland. It's currently, from what I can work out, 1:35 a.m. in Auckland. He must You must have a very tolerant wife.
Oh, I know. I was actually looking at having a go at that IOTA contest for a little bit, but the bands are really, really flat here in New Zealand at the moment, so sod it. I thought I'd come over and annoy you instead.
I'll just
obviously succeeding.
Hang on, I'll just put this camera
Hold on.
From the live stream.
I've got the wrong accent here, haven't I? That should be better.
Oh, please.
Oh, come on.
Careful, I know lots of New Zealander jokes. I'm just not using them at the moment.
I often go up to Japan and visit some of the ham radio clubs there, and they're very, very amused when they say, well, you sound different to Australians. And I go, oh, come on. All you have to do is do that and say mate a lot, and they just roll all over the floor laughing. I think it's rather hilarious.
The only place in New Zealand I didn't hear the New Zealand accent was Queenstown. It's very hard to find anybody who actually speaks English in Queenstown. I heard every other language but.
Well, the further south you get, the more you have to put on a Scottish brogue, and you start rolling the R. So you come from Gore and Invercargill.
Yes, I've noticed that. And Stewart Island is another place where I saw very few New Zealanders in Stewart Island. Most of them during summer are coming from Europe, I think.
You're lucky to escape Stewart Island. They might have, they still eat people down there. You realise?
I went around on Stewart Island with the friends Dave and Dave 3ASC and 7MJ. Mike Roth. We were taken around a bird sanctuary island, Ulva Island, off Stewart, by a Maori guide, lovely lady with a name that's very difficult to forget, Ulva Goodwillie. Now, you could make jokes about that, but she's a fairly fearsome, big Maori lady. And down there, she talked about, back in the days when Maoris were cannibals and all that sort of thing. But apparently, a major part of Stewart Island is still Maori owned, and they have full rights to birding, mutton birding and all that sort of stuff. So they were canny, and instead of is it the Treaty of Waikato? I think. Waitangi, where most of the New Zealanders settled for a settlement of beads and mirrors and such. The natives at the far south of New Zealand were a bit more canny. What's the audio like on the Zoom stream? I'm not sure which microphone I'm going through at the moment.
It's really good, actually. There's no lag in the microphone.
Okay. Well, you're
definitely good.
You're being streamed through the live stream camera. I'm not quite sure. As I wasn't expecting for this to work, I didn't make any special arrangement for the live stream, but you will be recorded on there. And you're all going out over 2 metres, incidentally. I have it all mixed. So I was hoping that none of the CB operators who specialise in lots of 4-letter words that you never heard before would come on.
I had to turn it off, Chris. Chris, I had to turn it off in the background before I come on.
What's that?
I had to turn it down in the background before I came on.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Oh, yeah. Of course, because you're hearing 2 of me, one with 30 seconds delay.
Yeah, and I'm also around the corner from the local Peanuts on CB.
Oh, okay.
Oh.
So are they re-radiating me on 27 megs or something?
No, you haven't been rebroadcast. Not tonight.
Oh, good. I'll have to... Hang on, I've just got to...
You got a lucky break there, Chris.
Yeah, sounds like it. I'll just switch another light on. That's a bit better from the point of view of Zoom. I don't know what it's doing to the other camera. I'll see if I can get the other camera.
The live stream looks like it's coming through nice and clear. There's no lag on everyone's video from what my iPad's telling me.
Okay, so I'm just turning this, so I'm trying to get a bit of the screen in on the live stream camera, which you can probably see just... Where is it?
Well, that matches it up a bit, doesn't it?
Yeah, I'll get that a bit closer. There must be an easier way to do this, some screen grabbing or something. We'll get there.
You do what I mentioned the other night, Chris. You go and buy yourself an ATM Mini and spend a couple of $1,000 on that.
Oh, you could easily spend up big on this. But the thing is, if I can do it in a crude way with software, I'm not going to spend. The ATM Mini, with the quoted price, was about $450.
Yeah, I know. Well, that's the bog standard one, though, isn't it? Yeah, well, there's ATM Minis and ATM Minis. So if you get the Pro version, I think you can stream from that as well.
Yeah, right.
And it takes away a lot of the funny stuff from Yoshi's streaming and all that sort of crap.
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
those ATM minis though, could he stream 2 computers at once? Because I think that's what he wants to try and do though. I think from memory.
It's a bit difficult to. I can frame grab on the other computer, but if I run Zoom concurrently with LiveStream, it means I've only got one sound card and I can't mix.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I've got a camera on that channel there, another camera on that channel. That's a computer, and that's a computer. And then, so you can have a camera there with its own audio, another camera there with its own audio, computer with its audio, another computer with its audio, or all cameras if you wish.
Yeah.
So you set it up so that if you're on that camera there, the audio will come from the camera. And so you can have the audio following the camera, or you can have a separate audio inputs, 2 separate audio inputs. Then you got all smart other stuff like being able to put picture in picture and all that sort of crap and carry on.
Right.
But that there solves a lot of problems for you, Chris, if you want to do what you're trying to do.
I'm sure it would, but $400 and something, getting it past that.
Yeah, that's what I'm looking at with that.
The Marital Housing and Loan Company would object, I think.
Well, stop going to the cafes down the road and put the money into a tin, and you'll get it eventually.
You're not going to make jokes about people who like smashed avocado by any chance, are you? Oh dear, yes. I envy you being in Hobart, Harry. It's one of my favourite places. I stay with friends I used to work with at the museum, now in retirement. They're in Beach Avenue, Bellerive, up high above the water, above the stadium, the Bellerive Oval.
About 10-minute drive from me, yep.
Yeah, it's a nice place to get a view of Hobart, and it's the best side of Hobart to do VHF. On the other side, you're so much under Mount Wellington and all the rest of it that your coverage of Hobart's limited. But from over on that side, you're on the bend of the river and you can see up and down.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely. And sorry, go.
My friend Mike 7MJ has just recently moved from Woodbridge to Margate. And he's in a much smaller premises. He was in a farm, so he had plenty of room for HF. Now he's trying to fit a vertical for HF into his place. Oh, God, here we go again. Love Chat XYZ, best adult dating site. Where's my...
I'm trying to tell you something, Chris.
Out of curiosity, I removed them. Do they remove on everyone's...
hide user on this channel.
They delete it after them. Once you delete
got him. SWAT. There we go.
Deleted.
It just has the message with message deleted after it, so that's a lot better.
Yeah.
How come I'm not getting them?
How are you doing, Peter? Are you hearing us okay?
Yeah, all really good.
Okay.
You hearing me okay?
So it looks like it's all viable. Hang on, I'm just trying to get rid of reflection.
We've got 8 people on. That's good.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Yeah, I can't see if there's any others applying. What should I tell them? Hang on. There's so many wires here. I'm going to have to completely rearrange the shack now. For those who are watching on live stream, if you'd like to join this Zoom meeting, the meeting ID is 833 606 3126. That is 833 606 3126. And the passcode is as follows: 9 small d 5 large G large Y 3. And I think you'll find it somewhere back on the text chat in live stream if you
I think who was it? Mark Harrison posted it. He said try and the passcode for it.
Yeah,
that was me.
Right, good. Thanks, Mark. Whereabouts are you, Mark?
Watsonia.
Oh, you're not too far. I could almost throw a rock in.
No.
I could almost throw rocks in that
Very
direction.
good signal. Very good signal on 2 metres.
Yeah, I'm running 40 watts on that radio, and I think it's got a Class D output stage because it only drags about 40% more than what you'd calculate for the full output power. And it needs virtually no heat sinking at all. I have a big 15 centimetre fan because I run it for an hour at a stretch, you know. But it's never given any trouble, and it's just continuous operation. The great thing about them, what is it, a FT7900, is that it has a digital input in the back, and while I don't run digital, it gives you direct access to the VCO. So you can put high quality audio with peak limiting in there, and it gives you the full 40 hertz to 8K or whatever, if people are listening off their discriminators. So it's particularly good from that point of view. Sorry, I'm boring people.
What sort of radio was that again?
FT7900 Yaesu. It's only a tiny little radio. I've had it with Peter down on the Zoom there, Peter 3ACZ. We went up to, you probably saw the video a couple of weeks ago, we went up to One Tree Hill, 500 metres up in the Dandenong Ranges, about 20 k's from here. And that little radio, it's excellent for use with lithium iron phosphate batteries. We can run for hours with a 20 amp hour battery on that thing in full power and no problem at all. Mountaintops.
I think we've actually got one of those up at our club rooms, and they run really good. Nice clear audio. They are really good.
Yeah.
From what I've heard.
Of course, they're a Yaesu. They have to be all right.
Exactly.
Do we have any Kenwood fans? Probably not.
Well, I do have a Kenwood HF.
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry, go.
Go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, but yeah, those radios are absolutely really good. The Yaesus I've heard they are really good. I kind of want to get my hands on the Yaesu FT. Is it the 817 or the 818?
Those are
they would be good.
shack in a box, basically.
Yeah.
Okay.
That'd be really good for going portable. And that's what I want to do at some stage.
That's the QRP version, the 818.
Yeah, definitely. Because even though I'm actually sort of new. This is my second year in the hobby, and those radios I actually would like to get out more. And I reckon if I buy one of those radios to go and do a bit of POTA and soda, that'd be really good.
Well, you've got a lot of mountains to choose from there.
Oh, definitely.
There was a place that I went up to. We did a light beam communication experiment from Mount Barrow to Mount Wellington back in 2005, and there's a sort of a place where one or two cars can go just off the Mount Wellington Road near a place called the Lost World Plateau, if you know what I'm talking about, a little bit down from the top of the mountain, which gets you away from the TV transmitters. That's the critical thing.
I've got a few good friends that actually contest on that spot, and they absolutely get really good results of that spot. So that's really good if you want to get communication for a vast majority of the state, which is really good.
Yeah. I know that Rex Monka 7MO goes up there with his digital, and this meeting will end in 10 minutes, upgrade now and save 40%. Does that mean I have to relaunch the room, or we have to relaunch the room? I suppose it does.
If you want to continue, just go log out, log back in.
How much does it cost to upgrade? Does anybody know?
You have to have a corporate ticket.
You have to buy a corporate license, and then you pay per seat.
Or you just become a university student. You get it for free.
That's the other way.
These days, I'd have to mortgage the house to become a university student. Plus, I doubt whether they'd take somebody my age.
I'm sure they would.
Yeah.
If you pay.
Yeah.
I'm looking at their plan. I'm looking at their plans now. Yeah, it's going to be a very executive decision, I reckon.
So it's a big amount of money, is it, to go more than 40 minutes?
I think it's $200 a year, isn't it? I think that's what the club pays.
Okay.
Yeah, see.
Yeah, $209 a year, which gives you 100 attendees, unlimited, I think, of time, and then it goes up further from there.
Yeah.
But yeah, $209 a year.
Okay.
You've also got a limit, I think, on the number of people who can meet.
100 attendees.
Yeah.
Okay.
What this is
on
saying.
the free one?
Ardrin,
on the free one.
On text chat on the live stream, Ardrin has just said $210 a year, so obviously he has some experience of it. But I know that there's an open source version of this called Jitsi, JITSI, and some radio clubs are apparently using it. Somebody told me that I think the Waverley Radio Club up in Sydney is actually using it for meetings. Does any of you have any experience of it? No?
I'm looking at their website now, actually.
JITSI. Nobody? No. I might give it a try anyway. It's just
I've used Teams on Office 365, but that gets even more expensive.
Yeah. Yeah, Microsoft gets very pricey.
Okay. Well, the reason I chose Zoom for this initial instance is that most people have used it. I think I've used it less than many people here. So at least people would know as a sort of a first try where to come. But in future, I might try Jitsi, and so I think I've got most of your emails. I don't think I've got Harry's, but I've got Peter's, Graham I'll see on Monday. What are you holding up your bow thing for, Terry?
No, bow thing.
What is it?
Oh, it's a Yaesu.
Oh, I see.
FT3DR.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm insulting you by calling it a bow thing then.
No.
Near enough, surely.
Probably it's about 20 bow things.
Okay.
In price-wise.
Yes.
They're way better than the bow things.
Near enough, I reckon.
Steve 3ZH, the local radio inspector is Steve Haynes 3ZH, very nice guy. But he said to me once when I revealed that I had a bow thing, he had a look in the back of the thing and it was locked out for anything but the amateur band, so it was quite legal. But he said, have you ever seen these lumps of crap? When you put them on a spectrum analyzer, you stick your finger on the button, they produce a carrier to start off with, and all the spurs come up within 10 seconds. And he said if you keep your finger on the button for 7 minutes, the whole thing goes pop and never comes on again.
Oh, that'd be a show.
Yeah.
With a lot of them, yeah.
I've got a Baofeng UV5R, and I've used it for our Sunday morning broadcast.
Oh my God!
Yeah, it lasted and we have 2 audios, both going for about 30 minutes. So what's that? About an hour?
Yeah.
Yeah, she goes fine.
Holy broadcasting and spread spectrum then.
Yeah.
How many bands all at once?
It does them all.
It's pretty cold down there, isn't it? So
that's value for money, isn't it?
Yeah.
It does a lot in one hit.
Something I noticed, one of the earliest of those cheap radios that was put out was called a Quansheng, back about 1997 or 1996. And the push-to-talk on the side of it was actually hot. It was somehow connected to the antenna, so if you held your thumb on that at 5-watt level for long enough, you could actually get a deep burn in your thumb. And I had a burn in my thumb that took, months to heal. So the
we know what your hot button is then, Chris.
Pardon?
We know what your hot button is then. Fine.
No comment.
It'll incriminate me, yeah. Just remember, this is going out on live stream. You never know who'll see it. Oh, dear.
Oh, dear.
Anyway, it must be getting close to 10 minutes. If you all disappear, we might go back to being on air. But thank you so much for coming up, Rolly, particularly with at the time it must be there. God. I mean, I know that you're a fairly hardy bloke, having been down to the sub-Antarctic, but if you spend every Saturday night up to 3 o'clock in the morning because of me, your Sundays must be pretty well stuffed.
Just a sign of a misspent youth, I think.
Oh, yeah, I think we all had one of those. I mean, Harry's still going through his, fairly obviously, but we've, you know... Be careful, Harry. Right. Ham radio can do this to you.
I noticed that a lot of us share a similar haircut.
Yeah, well, you know, we're all with the exception of Harry, we're getting into that demographic. That's the trouble.
I'm left out on that club.
Yeah, well, I can tell you, Harry, when you go bald, the first thing you notice is when rain falls, it sounds different. Instead of going sort of a soft splat, it goes bang on your head. And particularly if it's hailing, it's really painful.
Oh.
But, you know, it tends to bounce off here. I think that's why most young men have it. But, you know, I used to be a hippie. I had long hair down my back. I was on the Franklin blockade.
See,
that gives you a hint.
With my hair, this isn't the longest it will go yet. It usually goes to about here.
Okay.
Usually.
Before you get so annoyed with it being in your eyes, you have to chop it off somehow.
Yeah. So she does get long.
Yeah. I can remember.
And I've put.
Yeah.
When I get my hair cut next, I'll send you over some.
Okay. Well, when you talked about the club room, Harry, did you mean Reist, the old Mawson hut on top of? Yeah, I've been there with Mike on a couple of occasions.
It's good.
For those who don't know, the Radio and Electronics Association of Southern Tasmania is actually occupying the hut that was the transmitter hut for the long-wave spark station that was used for the Mawson expedition in 1913. So it goes back a long way. It's a vastly modified inside now. I don't think Mawson had Yaesu and Ken Wood and all the rest of it.
Very different, but it's very modernised now.
Yeah.
And it's got a TV studio, so we have our Wednesday night experimenters night on there as well. So.
Yeah. Justin's in charge of that, isn't he, I think?
Yes, VK3AML. He's in charge of that.
Yeah.
We have quite a few frequent guests on there, like Rex, VK7MO.
Mm-hmm.
And who else do we have on there? It's quite frequent. Quite a few on there, actually.
Yeah.
So, it's excellent. He is really excellent up there.
Yeah, the thing that I've noticed both in New Zealand and with yourselves in Tasmania is that the further you get away from large centres of population, I'm thinking in terms of Dunedin and Invercargill particularly, the proportion of the population who are into ham radio, and particularly into serious usage of ham radio, seems to be greater. So in Hobart, the proportion of amateurs in your population is probably much larger than the proportion we have here in Melbourne. And the ones that are there are doing some pretty spectacular stuff, like the digital stuff with Rex and all the rest of it. But of course, Rex was a former head of Antarctic research, so he has quite a background with it. Now, Greg 3ND is wandering around with his portable equipment, and we're getting a good view of Greg's ceiling and looking up Greg's nose. Oh, it's gone. It's gone. Zoom's gone. So we'll go back to the live stream. Hang on. At least we know we can do it now. That's good. I'll have to arrange something a bit more permanent. Now, back to live stream, people. Yes, Harry, it's ended here. We got our 40 minutes. I'll have to try and organise a limited time offer I've been offered here. Save 40% off Zoom Pro plus 1 year. Get offer. What does it do? I hit the button and it says contact sales. Order summary, monthly $20.99, annual $17.49. and they're offering me a $200 a year. Not that good. Wouldn't you know it? But thank you, all of you who were participating on there. It's nice to know that we can now do this because I have some friends in America who I need to interview. And I also have some friends in Britain who watch lunchtime their time. But thank you very much for those who were there. We'll go back to ham radio for the Melbourneites. Just hang on a sec, I'll get rid of this keyboard. And stick the sign back on here for, let me see. Sorry about this delay, people. Put that back there. So we've got that, and I'll switch off the light. That light I had to switch on for Zoom, and we should be back to normal, and I'll call people on ham radio. Hang on, we're showing too much of the ceiling. Point that down a bit. Good, we're back to where we normally are. So Peter, VK3ACZ, are you still with us on 2 metres? VK3ACZ and group VK3AML.
VK3AML and the group VK3ACZ. Wow, what an experience, Chris. Well, I knew what you, Graham and Greg looked like, but none of the others. So putting faces to the voices. We've all got great faces for radio. Hi. Very good. Just something that I forgot to mention earlier on. Jim 3AMN was hoping to give an audio-visual presentation of the last radio camp up at Heathcote, but unfortunately something happened to the memory card in his camera, so we won't be seeing anything on Monday night now that I've got that out of the way. Not much else to say, except we've got great faces for radio. Back to you, Chris, VK3AML and the group VK3ACZ.
Well, it's great that it all works. I'm just surprised that I've got enough bandwidth to do that, because when I had the switcher going, the two computers were really having trouble working with each other. But obviously we've overcome that. Now I'm going to have to develop on it. And sorry to have to cut you off, Rolly, but I might look into that Jitsi system, which apparently is an open source version of Zoom without any of the fancy trimmings, but it is open source and free, so that might be worth a try. I'll see who else is there. Graham, are you back with us? VK3DLW, VK3AML.
Yeah, Roger, Chris. I didn't hear anybody else. VK3AML, VK3DLW. Yeah, no, well, there's no reason for it not to work. We've used it. I've used it quite a lot. My wife did have a corporate account, but then she sold her business, so otherwise I'd offer that up. But when she sold her business, she didn't really have a need for anything longer than 40 minutes, and we mostly live within that limit, so that's not a problem. I will make this a final, but I still am a bit bemused by your switcher problems. I think whatever device you bought, it really got oversold, because just to give you an idea, I got one single line down from the office down to the shack, which runs about, 20 or 30 metres, and I have a dumb layer 2 switch that I bought from Officeworks, and I can stream you, and I can stream Zoom, and I can control my transceiver, and I can run my computer all off that one switch. So I think, I don't know why they sold you a layer 3 device, or a device with any layer 3 capabilities. You just needed a dumb layer 2 switch or an Ethernet switch, and so I don't know what's going on there. Anyhow, if you've sold it another way, you've sold it another way, but it just seemed a bit unnecessary. Anyway, I will make this a final, and great that the Zoom works, and that it's all a go. And we'll see you on Monday night, VK3AML, in the group, VK3DLW. Cheers.
Yeah, great, Graham. Thanks for taking part. It's been an interesting evening, and to give you some idea of how tight this was, getting it all going, I was still editing video at about 4 o'clock this afternoon for the bits of video that we had here, because each of them, if you think the audio was bad on some of them as transmitted, you should have seen the originals. 30 dB down at 3 kilohertz was one of the clips, with piles of hum at 60, 120, 96 hertz hum from the sprocket hole scanning on the optical track on 35mm. Could get rid of it all with comb filtering, so the only problem I had left was the distortion, which in some cases was bad, but not bad enough to affect the intelligibility. And let's face it, some of these films were 1936. How far back's that? It's 86 years ago. And of course the discs, the sound recordings, were 94 years old. They were transferred quite cleanly, but the person who transferred them thought that he would apply RIAA equalisation to it, and not the old Western Electric equalisation of the 1920s, which was constant velocity. If you apply RIAA equalisation, it gives you 6 dB per octave roll-off above about 700 hertz, which means that you've got a very woofy soundtrack off the very early disc. You have to boost it up to about 6 or 8K to get it back to the equalisation they put on the disc in the first place. So that's what we did with the ambient recordings of London street sounds from 1928. They should sound via the stream about the same as they sounded in that year. Around to you, Peter, and if nobody else is about, we might wind it up at this stage. I've had a long day trying to get the two computers working. I only got the two of them working with the separate cable here at about 3 o'clock. So it's been a race against time to get it all up and running, and Prue, with her spinal problems, has been needing attention from me occasionally, and I've been having to race through that, so I have to apologise to her. VK3ACZ, with a pause for any other breakers in case anyone else would like to drop in. VK3AML.
Nothing heard. VK3AML in the rapidly diminishing group. VK3ACZ, and good night, Graham. Look forward to seeing you on Monday. I won't be on the club 80 metre net in the morning, otherwise busy and occupied. Anyway, well, I wouldn't. I don't mean to criticise you for enhancing the audio a little bit and all those things, but given their age, I don't think anybody should really mind too much if there is a bit of snap, crackle and pop and hum and whatever else on it. But thank you for the effort that you went to clean it up for us anyway. Just absolutely magnificent stuff, and I explained earlier on why now I understand why it's got that nostalgic value for me, because I'm going back to my primary school days with the movie tone films that we used to sit in this little projection hall and watch right through primary school. I think we got a TV set by the time I was in grade 6, wouldn't you know it, the year after the moon landing at Apollo 11. But anyway, yeah, it's been another good night, Chris. Missed Dave, of course, but wasn't he going to be in England? Yeah. Anyway, I will start looking forward to next week already. And oh, by the way, that Spanish contact I made before, I was talking about 20 metres. I know I upset a few people. I call 20 metres the magic band because it's open for a couple of hours a day to somewhere in the world, whereas the other magic band that everybody knows is dead for months at a time. But them probably fighting words. But anyway, to Greg, Terry, and everybody else, anybody listening on the stream, good night to you all. Best wishes, and 7-3. 7-3 to you, Chris, and there'll be a lift home for you on Monday if required. I don't think Volker's back from his sojourn over there in Delta Lima. Anyway, till later on then, Chris, I will bid you farewell and good night. VK3AML, VK3ACZ. VK3ACZ
and group, VK3AML. Yeah, well, thank you, Harry Thau, 3BYY, all the rest of you that came on Zoom. I think we had 9 on at one stage. That worked out well. Now I have to work out ways of integrating it with LiveStream a little bit better. But we've had a fairly large number of viewers on LiveStream as well tonight, peaking out at, I think, 26. And then, of course, the participation on Zoom will make it easier, particularly for people abroad, as is evidence from Rolly from New Zealand popping up on the chat. That was really good. And thank you, Rolly. I appreciate your obvious donation to us of your ability to get up early on Sundays. What will they say at the local Presbyterian church, Rolly? Well, you may not be Presbyterian. You were from the north end of New Zealand, not Invercargill. Very good Presbyterians from Invercargill and Dunedin, I noticed. Very dour, some of those places. I was surprised, actually, if you're watching this, Rolly, at how, in spite of the fact that Dunedin is a university city, it goes to bed at about 6 p.m. It gets very dead, even compared to Invercargill. Invercargill has a larger number of tech school blokes, not gentlemen, blokes, and they seem to have a greater desire for nightlife. So one of the best Indian restaurants I struck in the whole of New Zealand was a place called A Touch of Spice, I think, in Tay Street, Invercargill. And I'll say it's very bad because I just realised I'm advertising over ham radio, and that's not the done thing. So I hated it. Gave me the gas. Anyway, with that, Greg, VK3 Pirate, the cable splitter I got, for whatever reason, would not allow the two computers to work together. It would allow me, without switching, to browse on one computer and then the other, but if I ran video on both, it would really fall apart. It just wouldn't allow one or the other to continue YouTube. So I included this second cable, and in due course what I'll do is I'll double up the cable that I've got, which is Cat6A, running the live stream, and take a Cat6A back to the modem for the second computer. Cold nights and lack of TV may be the problem. I don't know, Rolly. ZB News Radio is pretty good over there. I listen to that a lot if I get insomnia midnight to dawn and have to shove the earbuds in my ears. I'll take one last listen on 2 metres for anybody who might like to call in from Melbourne. VK3 Alpha Mike Lima taking a final listen on 2 metres.
VK3AML.
Yeah, hopefully you've seen my message on the chat stream, Chris, but yeah, just thank you once again, and yeah, look, the outcome of those things just really speaks for themselves, and we really appreciate you bringing them to us. And yeah, a splitter won't work. You just need a dumb Ethernet switch, not an IP device, and then it will work. Anyway, never mind. Catch you, VK3AML, VK3DLW. Speak to you on Monday night. Cheers.
Thanks, Graham. And 3BYY, I'll take a call from you, VK3AML.
Yeah, okay, Chris. Yeah, I agree with Graham that the switch shouldn't be a problem. In this household, at one stage, we had 2 university students, and my wife and myself, all sharing an ADSL line at the start of COVID. And we had a 16-way switch hanging off the back of the ADSL box, and that went off into everybody's room has another switch because we got so many computers. I think we had 15 computers at one stage, various types and automated devices and things. And it was really just a case of just plug them in and use them. The only place you get into real trouble is if people start fiddling about putting in fixed IP numbers into both the NBN modem router type end and the PCs, then you have to know what you're doing. Otherwise, you can very easily end up in that situation where you have 2 PCs trying to share the same address, and one bit of software will win sometimes and the other one will win other times, which sounds a bit like what you've got, actually. So that's a possibility. But I wonder if you have everything hooked up for DHCP. Although I must admit, if you're running video streaming and software, then perhaps you do need to have a fixed IP on some computers and set up port forwarding on the internet end, so that it all works. So yeah, I agree with Graham. It should work. 3AML, VK3AML.
Oh yeah, everybody said the same, and my computer lady said there should be no problem. But there was, and I got one of the better ones. I think I spent 50, 60, 70, something like that. You can get them down to 25 or thereabouts, but I thought foolishly I should get the best one available, and it looks like I've shot myself in the foot. But obviously I've got enough cable to throw in a lead to the other room. It's just a matter of installing a 20 metres worth of Ethernet, good Ethernet cable through the roof back to the modem, and the whole thing will be sorted. At the moment it's running across the floor in the other room. My wife won't like it terribly much, but I can hide it behind curtains and stuff. Okay, well thank you very much 3BYY, and thank you to all the people who are on the Zoom tonight. That's the first time I've ever used it with live streaming. I've been afraid of the amount of bandwidth it'll take up and what would happen with Ethernet cable sharing. It looks like we're over the problem, and now I'll be able to tell people in Britain that they can join also, because I understand in London at the moment it's late lunchtime, which would be a convenient time for people to view. See you, Terry. I see you saying goodbye there. Rolly, likewise. Cold nights and lack of TV may be the problem. Oh, I see, in Invercargill. I've only ever seen Invercargill in summer, and apparently when we went to Stewart Island, we had an unprecedented heat wave. It hit 20 degrees C on Stewart Island. I was absolutely dumbfounded. I went there with long johns and all the precautions and didn't need them. So, you know, if anything, I was sweating, because when it hits 20 C on Stewart Island, it's very humid, I must say. But it's a fascinating place, particularly being able to see not only kiwis at night, but those other flightless birds that you see on Boulder Beach. I don't know the name of them. They look a little like a kiwi in colour, but they're not as fat and round and strange looking. Okay, I'll take a final listen on 2 metres and then we will be closing. VK3 Alpha Mike Lima standing by.
One last comment, Chris.
Yeah, go ahead.
You mentioned trying to get the Zoom into your, well, presumably into your video mixing system there. One thing I did years ago, I'm not sure if you're familiar with VLC, the video player software, but it does a lot more. It can stream video as well. And from memory, you can capture a video, or even just a portion of the video off the screen of your computer, and stream that over to your other computer, where presumably your video mixing software could take that in as the stream and mix it in with your regular video going out to YouTube. That's a possible no-cost solution.
Yeah, I was just replying on text to Rolly in New Zealand. He said that the flightless bird we saw on Boulder Beach, the daytime one, was the Weka, W-E-K-A, which I was surprised to see. Yeah, I have VLC Media Player on both of the computers, but I've not used it. OBS software also can stream or can record off the screen. It can screen scrape, and as a means of getting recordings together of the Zoom screen and then putting it with the live stream not in real time, that may be an option, but I'd have to investigate to see how to stream it from one computer to another. Not quite sure what would be involved with that. I'll have a word to my computer lady. As I say, I'm not all that computer literate that I know about much about port forwarding and networking. I know a fair bit about audio, but the rest of it is black art to me, so I just know the right people to sort it out. And thank you, Andrea. Andrea actually suggested I get an extra sound card, an extra video card for the old i3 computer, and that would relieve the motherboard of a lot of the RAM stress, because the video cards, the extra video card has a 2 gig RAM on it, and that would significantly upgrade the video. OBS can use NDI to capture another computer screen over the network. That might be a big project, though. I'll look into it, Ardrin. Ardrin, before I go, whereabouts are you? Are you actually in Australia, or are you somewhere else? I'll bumble around here, just killing a bit of time while we wait for a typing comment from you. I don't think I've ever found out where Ardrin comes from. He's on the text chat. And we're down to 15 people on the viewing. Of course, it's 30 seconds before Ardrin sees my comment. I should really, now that I know that I've got the bandwidth, I really should cut down the latency on this. I run 30 seconds of latency intentionally because I want to avoid the possibility of buffer underrun, but I'm probably overdoing it now that I've got an excellent connection on NBN. And I can't see any response from him. He's probably gone. Okay, with that, I'll wrap up for this week, and thank you, all of you, for making the Zoom call in. He's in Dandenong. Okay, VK3ARD. Sorry, Ardrin. I somehow thought that you were in Britain or something. Heaven knows. Perhaps if you'd like, we'll try. If I'm around next Saturday, I don't want to kill my social life by doing this every Saturday of the year, but I'm in for a lot of them because of my wife having the spinal problem, apart from everything else at the moment. We'll have to see if we can do the Zoom a little bit more often as a talkback arrangement, and I'll have a clock up here with a 40-minute time limit on it, so I'll know exactly how much time to give it. Okay, with that, all the best to people on 147.475. Hope you enjoyed it, and we hope to be back next Saturday. It's a bit iffy at this stage because at some stage I have to bring my antenna down. One of the 3 guy wires has parted company with the antenna, and I have to pull the antenna down to renew the feed line and to renew now the guy. Fortunately, the guys that remain up there are good for westerly winds, but if an easterly wind blows, it's a little bit dicey. With that, all the best from VK3AML on 2 metres. VK3, Alpha Mike Lima now closing on 147.475. And again, thanks Rolly particularly, but to the rest of you, thank you for making the Zoom chat such a good success. Sorry that the people on LiveStream will see it as a tiny corner of my picture, but hopefully the 1080p will make something of the other screen that we had up running Zoom. So with that, I go in and end the stream for the 30th of August, and we'll see you in September. Sorry, 30th of July, and we'll see you in August. It's getting late. All the best, people.